This is a movie Jesus was afraid to see. It's also the pinnacle of director James Wan. It should be one of the best horror movies ever made. It's also a must-see for horror fans. The horror of this film is not in the spirit. This film is full of energy. Please watch in the company of your family. Male protagonist Chowsher is a teacher. His wife Lainey is a freelance musician. They have 3 children together. The eldest son, Dalton, Foster and Callie, and the Chowsher family has just moved to a new residence. Lainey and her little girl were the only ones at home during the day, while he was concentrating on making music. On the baby monitor came the cries of a young daughter. Lainey hurried upstairs to put her daughter back to sleep. Then she went to the attic of the house. You didn't see anything strange, though, but it still has a spooky feel to it. In the evening, the family of 4 are chatting in the living room. Dalton, playing alone on the stairs, found the door to the attic was quietly opened. He seemed to have some kind of calling. Up the stairs to the attic, and then I had to pull the light switch. The ladder snapped. Dalton fell. After getting up, as if in a dark corner. Did you see anything terrible? Then there was a scream. The couple heard Dalton shouting. They hurried into the attic. Dalton was found to have only minor bruises. It seems to be all right. Early the next morning, Lainey prepared the family's breakfast as usual. Dalton was slow to get up. She sent her husband upstairs to shout. Chowsher shouted his son's name while helping him prepare his clothes. But gradually he realized something was wrong, because no matter how he slaps it, the son shows no sign of waking up. The couple rushed Dalton to the hospital, but the doctor checked him all over the place. Everything's fine, but he's still unconscious. 3 months passed in a flash. Seeing my eldest son never get better, Lainey didn't want to write. He was alone at home this day. Suddenly a voice came from the little girl's room. It was like someone whispering. Lainey heard the noise and rushed upstairs, and when she felt her little girl's room, only to find the only one in here is a crying little girl. Nothing else. That night, while Lainey was sleeping with Foster, the middle child, Foster suddenly said she was scared. I want to change to another bedroom. What does Lainey not understand? Foster said. He didn't like Dalton, always walking up and down in his room. The second brother's words made Rennie nervous, because their oldest son, Dalton, he was in a coma for more than 3 months. How could it be like middle brother said? You can walk around on your own. Go back to the bedroom. Lainey told me about the noise coming from the little girl's room during the day. I told Joe sure. But Josh thinks Lainey is mistaken, so he didn't take it to heart. While they were talking, suddenly there was a sharp knock on the door. They just moved in and don't know their neighbors very well. Who on earth is knocking at the door? And when Josh came out to check it out, but there was no one at the door. Joe Stone thought someone was playing a prank. He locked the door again and turned on the alarm. And on the other side, Lainey heard her daughter crying from the house next door. She went over to check. I found a man standing in front of my daughter's bed. Frightened, Lainey called for her husband. But only in the blink of an eye. The man disappeared without a trace. Before they can figure out what's going on. Alarm at the door. The machine rang. When Joe Stone again ready to go downstairs to see, only to find their own door already wide open. But here's the weird thing. He never knew who had broken into the house. Josh, turn off the alarm. Then carefully in the room to find out. He suspected someone had broken in, but he searched every corner of the room. I didn't even see anyone. Lainey also brought her daughter to Dalton's room. The whole family is in this weird atmosphere. Spent the night. Lainey was about to change Dalton's sheets, only to find a handprint on the bed. It was a moment Lainey couldn't take anymore. She channeled her inner discontent, took it out on Chowsher, and showed him the sheet with the handprints on it. They broke up on bad terms that night. Chowsher also chose to sleep on the sofa. At midnight, Lainey woke up from a nightmare. A man suddenly appeared in the room. He went for Lainey. Lainey's screams woke Joe on the couch. And when he rushed to the bedroom, only to see Lainey crouching alone in the corner. Lainey cried and told Joe that there was someone else in the room. You have to trust me. Joe rushed to Lainey and hugged her, and said she had absolute confidence in him. Then he decided to move again. The next day, Chowsher moved to his mother's home with his family of 4. When my mother saw the family photo, be very surprised. He never expected to live. You can still see a picture of Joe Stone and Lainey on the other side. I wonder why Chowsher's mother would say that. Lainey was cleaning up her new house alone, right when he went out to take out the trash, only to see it through the window. I have a kid at home. When Lainey came into the house, the child seemed to be playing hide-and-seek with himself. Lainey hurried in after him. I was suddenly rushed out of the closet. The boy who came sat down on the ground in fright. Lainey was desperate. That means even if they moved to a new home, I didn't get rid of all this weird stuff. And when Joe Stone comes home from work, only to see Lainey invite a priest, Lainey told Joe what happened to her during the day. And Chowsher apparently does not believe in ghosts and gods. But then Chowsher's mother said, he had a strange dream last night. I dreamed of a demon. They're eyeing their oldest son, Dalton. In the memories of Chowsher's mother told, I saw the demon from my dream last night. Suddenly appeared behind Chowsher. Moment of near agreement. They heard strange noises coming from Dalton's room. When they opened the door, it was a mess before my eyes. director, Joe Scher's mother contacted his old friend Elise. Come to help, find out if it's really an evil spirit. Early the next morning, Elise knocked on the door of the house. He and Joe's mother had been friends for years. When Elise saw Joe Stone, the words sounded as if he had known Joe Scher, but Joe Scher has no impression of this. Then Elise went about the room. When he came to Dalton's room, but suddenly something was wrong. He is above the head of the bed. I saw this incredible thing, because he was the only one who could see it. So he's the only one to describe it. His assistant sketched it, and then I drew all these things. Then Elise told Joe and Rennie their son was not in a coma. There is a term called astral projection. It's known as the unsheathing of the soul. And their oldest son, Dalton, someone who has that ability. At night he thought he was dreaming. It's actually his spirit wandering around, for time. The wandering distance is further and further each time. The reason he can't wake up now, it was because his soul was lost, not being able to get back into the body. And Dalton's soul, it's being lost in a place called depression. This depression is all around us, but it's way beyond our perception. It's filled with the spirit of death from abuse. Dalton's soul was trapped in that place. All that was left was an empty body. The ones Lainey sees all the time. It's all about the smell of a body. That's why we rallied around Dalton. This is their family. No matter where you move to, Lainey sees evil spirits in her house all the time. These spirits are intent on taking possession of Dalton's body, because they desire life. They're trying to use Dalton's body to get back to life. But other than that, there is another, more evil spirit. He's not just trying to take over the body, and they want to hurt the people around them. This is one of them. Now they are running out of time. The longer Dalton's spirit is gone, the weaker his connection to his body will be. The easier it will be to possess evil spirits. At this, Joe interrupted their conversation. He couldn't stand the voodoo talk of these people. I agreed to bring Elise over, just to make my wife feel better. And he drove them out of the house. That evening Joe came to Dalton's room. Although he was adamant during the day, but he's not sure about his son's soul either. If it's really what Elise says it is, to another world. This is the moment. One of my son's paintings floated down from the wall. Joe went over to check, discover the figure in the painting, the demon he described to Elise. Very similar. Some of the other pictures have a few lines on them last night. I saw myself sleeping. Then I flew away. Isn't that an out-of-body experience? Joe Scher was completely shaken. He chose to accept Elise's help. The next day Elise was ready to begin her own plan. He invades depression in the form of a soul. Look for Dalton. I'm going to have to keep my voice down. The assistant will write down his words in his diary. When everything is ready, Elise started the ceremony. He put a mask over his face. And then we used self-hypnosis. I sent myself into a depression. He began to whisper Dalton's name. Let him follow his voice out of here. Elise was sure enough. Dalton's spirit was soon found. But what was it that Darden seemed to fear? Afraid to talk to Elise. Then Dalton's spirit whispered to them, bad luck if the red-faced devil finds out. But Elise don't know what's going on in Dalton. I just hope he follows the call, back in his own body. It turned out just as Dalton had feared. Elise's call after all, or by the red-faced devil. Just then Dalton's voice suddenly disappeared. In its place was an evil curse and death warning. Elise was getting a little overwhelmed. Finally, only to escape from depression. But it's not over yet. It was as if Dalton had been possessed by evil spirits. He came before them. He reached out and knocked everyone to the ground. Not only that, other evil spirits flooded into the room. Start looking for your own prey. Just when everything went haywire, Elise grabbed Dalton and shouted at him, forcing evil spirits out of his body. Then peace gradually returned. It just didn't bring Dalton's soul back. Then Elise called Joe Scher's mother. There was something they had to tell Josh. It turns out Dalton's out-of-body experience was no accident. He inherited it from his father, Joe Scher. It turned out that when Joe Scher was 8 years old, he often sees an older woman. Be there for yourself. Mother didn't pay much attention at first, until he saw the man himself. Mother handed a photo album to Joe Scher. It's full of pictures of him as a kid. These photos have one thing in common. The old woman was in every picture. Mother gradually woke up to the danger, so Elise was brought in. Elise suppressed Joe Stone's memory and the ability to exhalate his soul. It's the only way to stop the evil spirits. Joe Scher is afraid to take pictures. It's the legacy of his childhood. The only way to save Dalton now is to unseal Joe Stone. Let his soul go to the other side. Bring back Dalton's soul. But that's a big risk. It could cause Joe's to get lost in one. To save his son, Joe decided to take the plunge anyway. And then Elise led the way. Joe soon entered the spirit world. He's in the spirit state. Saw the ghosts in the house they lived in. He was frightened into a cold sweat. I had so many ghosts lurking around me. He walked on and found a red gate. He had seen the door in one of his son's paintings. That's where Darden must be. But just when he's ready to go in, a man suddenly appeared in front of him. He did not say a word with Chow Shinyu hit together. Elise on the other side saw his shaking body. I knew he was in trouble, so I told him with my voice that you were stronger than he was, because you were alive. Hear this sentence. Words of Joe Stone tried his best to push the man down the attic. The danger has been lifted for the time being. Then he went into the red room and found Dalton in a corner. But at the same time the red-faced devil found them. Joe Scher picked up his son and ran away. Then the red-faced devil swooped down on them. But this time it was clear that Joe Stone couldn't beat him. Then, Joe Stone took Dalton to escape here. And on the other side, suddenly the room where they were all was shaking. Elise knew that Josh had succeeded in finding Dalton. Josh was groping in the dark. I had no idea which direction I was going, so they could find their way home. Elise had Laney call them for guidance. Sure enough, it followed Laney's voice. Joe soon found his way home, simultaneously. A host of nearby evil spirits also heard Laney's call. They followed the sound into their home. Come home. Joe Stone let Dalton first back into his body, and at this time, he met the same old woman again. He dared to shout at the other side, "Get out of my world." And the old woman had indeed disappeared from his sight. Other side. I see so many evil spirits about to win. Joe sure is finally here. At the last moment, he returned to his own body. A great number of evil spirits have vanished. At the same time, Dalton moved his finger too. He came back from that world, too. The ending is perfect. Family reunion. Elise also smiled with relief. Then the assistants packed up to leave. Laney is Dalton. A large plate of pasta was prepared. It had been a long time since he had tasted anything so delicious. And on the other side, Chowsher is looking at a picture of himself as a child. He won't need them anymore. Hand over the photos. I gave it to Elise. In the moment I took the picture, Elise's expression froze. Then he sneaked out his special camera, suddenly took a picture of Chowsher. This move by Elise, thoroughly infuriated in front of the Chowsher. He shouted curses at Elise. Then I went up and grabbed him by the neck, until he stopped breathing. When Laney heard something outside and came to check, Elise is long gone. And there was no one else. And when he picked up Elise's dropped camera, this moment, Laney saw the unthinkable. Turns out when Elise took the photo, found that Chowsher's hand is a pair of old man appearance. He realized that the spirit that enters Chowsher's body is not Chowsher himself. And when he took a picture with his camera, it was the same old woman who had entered him. Elise didn't get a chance to tell anyone else. When Laney was looking scared, Joe suddenly appeared behind him. So far the film lurks the first plot to this end.